My daughter's fiancé scoffed at the beggars until I showed up in my luxury rolls. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with expectation, buzzing with excitement. My daughter, Emma, was set to marry the man of her dreams. Yet, I could feel the tension building like a storm on the horizon. It started with a stifled laugh, a cruel sound cutting through the warm afternoon. Jordan, her fiancé, stood there, his face twisted in disgust as he eyed the homeless man on the corner. "Get a job, loser," he sneered, laughing with his friends as they sauntered by. I felt a pang in my chest, the kind that roots you to the spot. How could he be so heartless? I took a sharp breath, the lump in my throat tightening like a vice. Emma, standing beside me, froze. Her eyes widened, a flicker of horror crossing her face. I glanced over at her, and the look she wore shattered me a mix of embarrassment and disappointment. That moment dragged on, the world around us fading until only the two of them existed. It felt surreal, like watching a movie unfold. That night, as I loaded into my luxury rolls, I could still hear Jordan's laughter echoing in my ears. The leather seats enveloped me, soothing but also heavy with despair. I knew I had to do something, confront him, show him the truth. He needed to see the world through a different lens. I had to expose the masks people wore. As I drove through the bustling streets, the headlights of other cars glared against the tinted windows. Each stoplight felt like a heartbeat, throbbing in rhythm with my racing thoughts. I thought about Emma. She deserved better. I arrived at the venue where they were celebrating their engagement. The atmosphere was electric, laughter spilling from the walls like a flood of joy. But I was not here to join the festivities. No, I had a mission. I slipped inside, my heart pounding in my ears. The click of my heels echoed ominously as I moved through the crowd. And there he was, Jordan. The smug smile plastered across his face as he recounted stories that elevated him in front of his friends made my blood boil. But I stood back, watching, plotting. Then, just as I was about to reveal myself, I noticed a familiar face in the corner of the room. It was the homeless man. I blinked, my breath catching. How did he get here? Was it a coincidence, or had he followed me? My mind raced, questions pouring in like a broken dam. I approached slowly, my hands trembling. What was I even doing? But then, I knew. I had to confront both the man who thought he could trample on the weak and the man who might hold the secrets of my unraveling. Just then, I felt an icy shiver crawl up my spine. Jordan's laughter faded. I turned to see him scanning the room, his expression shifting from arrogance to unease. He caught sight of me, and for a split second, our eyes locked, the air heavy with tension. And then, before I could speak, the doors swung open, and a gust of wind blew in, throwing my carefully laid plans into chaos. The man stepped forward, a wild look in his eyes, as he pointed at Jordan. "I know you," he shouted, his voice echoing with authority. The room fell silent. Heart racing, I felt the weight of that moment. Emma stood frozen, mouth agape. Something shifted in the air. How could this stranger know my daughter's fiancé? What was going to happen next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence that enveloped the room seemed almost tangible, charged with an electric tension. Everyone was frozen, eyes darting between the homeless man's wild expression and Jordan's suddenly pale face. My heart thudded in my chest, both in confusion and a dawning sense of possibility. Then the man stepped closer, his voice trembling but steady. "You remember me, don't you? You made quite an impression in the park the other day. His gaze bore into Jordan, unyielding, and for a moment it felt like he was the only one in this room with any real power. Jordan swallowed hard, and a hint of something primal flickered across his face: anger, fear, embarrassment. I could see all the bravado slipping away, replaced by a boyish vulnerability that exposed the insecurity buried beneath his facade. Emma's hand slipped into mine, her grip tight and searching for reassurance. My own heart ached for her. She had looked up to Jordan, enamored with his charm, and now this was unraveling at a speed I couldn't comprehend. All I could do was squeeze her hand tighter, willing her to find strength in this moment. The homeless man turned to me for a second, vulnerability etched into his weathered features. "I remember you too," he said, his voice softer now but still resonant with warmth. "You stopped to talk, to really see me. You gave me hope." That I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Hope was a precious currency, and here stood a man whose life was painted in shades of gray, yet he dared to hold on to it. Why couldn't Jordan see that? My mind swirled with a mixture of anger and despair. "Are you going to just stand there while this man disrespects you, Jordan?" I finally blurted out, the words tumbling out of my mouth like they had been waiting for this moment to escape. "This isn't a game. This is someone's life, someone's reality." Jordan's eyes flicked to me, something dark and rebellious igniting within them. "What's it to you? You're no better than me, hiding behind that car of yours, judging me when you don't know anything." His defensive posture was familiar, a mask of superiority that he wore too well. The tension snapped, shifting from the homeless man back to him. A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered guests, their eyes wide, filled with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Those who had once looked up to Jordan were now rendered uncertain, caught in the powerful current of the moment. "Maybe I don't know your story," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt, "but I do know pain when I see it. I know what it's like to wear a facade, to pretend to be something you're not while hiding the truth beneath. You're not as invincible as you think, Jordan." Jordan's jaw tightened, and for a brief instant, a flicker of vulnerability passed over him, like the briefest flash of lightning illuminating the dark. "You think you know me?" he spat. "You don't know anything, but I care to know," the homeless man interjected, standing proudly despite his ragged clothes. "Someone once took the time to see me. Not everyone here is privileged, Jordan. Not everyone can treat the world like their playground." His voice rang out, full of conviction, each word hammering against the walls of indifference. A ripple of connection sparked, a moment that blurred the lines dividing us. In that charged atmosphere, I saw something shift, not just in Jordan, but in Emma too. She stood there, the shock fading, replaced with a whirlwind of emotions brewing deep within her. I could almost witness the wheels turning in her head, the realization dawning, her childhood perceptions shattering like glass. Suddenly, Jordan stormed towards the exit, ready to bolt, but I wasn't ready to let him go. "Jordan!" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Don't walk away. This could be the moment that changes you." I wasn't sure I believed those words, but I had to try. He paused, his back to me, tension vibrating in his frame. The room held its breath, all eyes on him, waiting for clarity, for a response, his moment to either crumble or confront the humanity he so easily dismissed. With a deep breath, I edged closer, trying to bridge the gulf between us. I needed to reach the man I thought I knew, the one my daughter had fallen for. "You don't need to be the person everyone expects. You can choose empathy. You can choose to be different." Emma's hand slipped from mine, the bond of our shared disappointment now too heavy to bear. Her feet moved without her conscious will, drawn towards Jordan, caught in the storm of her emotions. "Jordan!" she called, desperation coating her voice. But then, he turned slowly to face her, eyes glistening with something unnameably, a crack in the armor of indifference. Just as I thought he would step back, he took a step forward, caught in an inner battle that left us all hanging on the edge of hope. But before I could hold my breath for his response, a loud crash erupted from the back of the room. A part of me jolted at the sound. This wasn't just a turbulent moment anymore. An unexpected fanfare around the edges of chaos began to close in. And as I spun around to see what had caused the distraction, the last thing I expected was the sight of a figure I thought I'd left behind me, estranged sister, eyes blazing with unresolved history, standing defiantly in the doorway, staring straight at me with a challenge hanging in the air. The world I had only just begun to confront was spinning, and I had no idea how to regain my balance. What was she doing here? What storm was about to break loose? The silence created by my sister's entrance was suffocating, pressing down on my chest like a heavy shroud. The soft hum of murmurs that had begun to ripple through the room vanished as all eyes turned to her, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and surprise. The homeless man stepped back slightly, sensing the shift in energy, his face a portrait of uncertainty that mirrored my own. "Rachel," I breathed, the name escaping my lips as if it were on the edge of a cliff, poised to either plunge or fly. It had been years since she had crossed my mind, years since I had thought about the untangling threads of our past. Here she was, defying all logic by stepping back into my life just as it threatened to unravel beautifully, a moment when I needed no more complications. Her gaze held mine with an intensity that felt as if it could burn a hole through my defenses. "I heard you were in town," she stated, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of tension. "It seems you've decided to make a spectacle of yourself, haven't you?" My heart sank, the ever-familiar ache of unresolved issues nudging its way to the forefront. This was the sister who had once been my closest ally and had become my starkest rival, and now she stood between me and the fragile connection I had just begun to forge with Jordan and Emma. "Rachel, this isn't the time," I urged, though it came out softer than intended. I needed to focus on the moment, on the desperate need for understanding that lingered like a thick fog over our heads. For a fleeting moment, Jordan forgot his battle against confinement. His curiosity about this unexpected intrusion broke through the barrier surrounding him. "And who are you?" he asked, tone a delicate mixture of disdain and intrigue. Before I could answer, Rachel stepped further into the room, her presence cutting through the tension. "I'm here on behalf of someone who cared, someone who always wanted you to be better than this," she said, lifting her chin with defiance. "You've long since squandered the chances handed to you." It struck a chord deep within me, igniting memories of childhood that I had buried, forgotten in the chaos of our estrangement. I felt myself slipping, the past clawing its way into the present, threatening to overshadow everything I had built. But Jordan's eyes bore into her, and they were no longer brimming with scorn. There was something more: curiosity, an interest in the drama unfolding before us. "She's right in some ways," he said slowly, his voice a touch softer, the storm inside him giving way to uncertainty. "You act like you're above everyone else, but people are suffering out there. How could you not see that?" I held my breath, surprised that Jordan had morphed into a voice of reason in the span of moments. But it was fleeting, the barrier of his self-preservation rising again as he turned back to his own battles. "Just another scold trying to make herself feel better." As the whispers resumed, confusion hung in the air like mist, pooling in the corners of the room. My daughter's face was a canvas, painted with disappointment and fear as she stood frozen, caught in the crossfire of childhood naivety and awakened reality. "Jordan, listen," I started, my heart bleeding with the truth of what lay beneath the surface of his bravado. But before I could continue, Rachel shrugged off my concern, a bitter smile pulling at her lips. "Don't. This is between you and me," she declared, the sharpness of her tone slicing into the hesitant bonds I had begun to weave. "I'm tired of living in your shadow." I could almost hear the crackling energy surrounding us escalating as Jordan looked back at me, searching, caustic. "Is this the family you're so proud of? Toxicity wrapped in glamour? Just another affirmation that we're all broken." I felt surges of anger and betrayal twist inside me under his words, and Rachel's incessant need to provoke only intensified the chaos that danced dangerously close to the edge. Yet there also flickered a small, hopeful spark. The homeless man, ever the observer, stepped forward and addressed Jordan with a parser's sensitivity. "Maybe it's time to redefine what family means," he said, his voice calm despite the storm swirling around us. "Sometimes those we choose shatter our expectations more than those we're tied to by blood." Jordan stiffened, hesitating for a fraction of a second as the weight of the homeless man's words hung in the air. His walls shifted uncertainly, threatening to let something in. Yet before he could respond, a flash of fear flickered across Emma's face, and she broke from her frozen moment to step between us, looking desperately at both Jordan and my sister. "Wait. You can't just do this. I can't be caught in the middle. She cried, voice shaking as if the world threatened to collapse upon her. In that instant, the room inhaled sharply, and my sister's gaze softened slightly, not entirely unyielding but still firm, signaling that the deeper issues between us remained unresolved. I saw the weariness in her posture, a faint reminder that she too had fought her battles, and her own darkness lay concealed beneath layers of pride, but before I could reach out to comfort Emma or address Rachel, the moment splintered as the homeless man lifted a trembling hand, a gesture that commanded silence and fidelity. I see brokenness all around, but for every fracture, there is a chance to heal, he said slowly, each word an anchor in the tumult. Look beyond yourself. You all are here for a reason. Perhaps this is the moment to remember empathy. As we stood there, poised on the precipice of revelation, the notion of hope lingered like a fragile thread, connecting us despite the differences that bled between us. Yet, even as I sought connection and understanding, an ominous shudder ran through the room when Rachel suddenly spoke again. If you want real change, then you need to confront your past. Before she could finish, the lights flickered, a power surge spiraling through the room, cutting off her words. The anxious energy heightened as faces turned to the ceiling, murmurs of confusion bouncing off the walls. And with that loss of light, the world around us began to shift again, a jarring reminder that shadows would always threaten to retake their place. The final plunge into the unknown loomed ahead, and amidst the chaos, I felt a sinking certainty deep within, a revelation that the course of our lives hinged on choices we hadn't acknowledged yet, choices spiraling unfathomably close. The darkness enveloped the room, shrouding thoughts and emotions in unfathomable depth. I had no idea what awaited us when the lights returned, but the fear that surged within me whispered that some truths were best unearthing even if they would shatter everything we thought we knew. The darkness felt alive, crawling across the walls and devouring the space between us. It had a sour breath that clung to my skin, and I sensed that, even in this blind uncertainty, everything was about to change. Each heartbeat resonated like a drum, loud enough to drown out the whispers that mingled with fear and confusion. Emma's voice sliced through the murky air. Mom! What's happening? Her wide eyes, filled with concern, searched mine for reassurance. I could only offer a shaky smile, but even I could feel the tremors of anxiety coiling around us. Rachel stood rooted to her spot, her expression shifting from defiance into something softer, perhaps fear or understanding. It was as if the darkness had stripped away layers of her bravado, laying bare a vulnerability hidden beneath. Mom! She uttered, revealing a sense of vulnerability that caught me off guard. Moments stretched indefinitely as I pondered our choices. We were all so closely woven together in this tangle of unresolved feelings, and yet, we could not see the strength that came from the threads binding us. I felt the need to bridge the distance, to mend the broken ties of our family. Rachel, I said, my voice barely a whisper above the muddled confusion. We can figure this out. Perhaps, in this uncertain darkness, we could rebuild the bridges we had both burned long ago, even amidst our fraught history. Then, as if pulling us from an abyss, the lights flickered back to life, casting stark brightness that momentarily blinded me. I shielded my eyes, but as the world around me came into focus, I realized that we hadn't returned to normalcy. Instead, the atmosphere was electric, imbued with the sense that something seismic had just shifted. Against the vivid background of ordinary life, I immediately noticed the expression on Jordan's face. His eyes had turned from mere curiosity to shock, and then disbelief, as he directed his gaze past me. I turned, my heart caught in my throat, only to find the homeless man standing by the door, but there was something different about him. The shadows no longer clung to him, a strange luminescence surrounded him, casting a golden glow that made him look almost ethereal. Jordan's voice broke the air, heavy with incredulity. Who are you? He demanded, for no longer did this man seem merely a bystander, seemed powerful, as if he harbored secrets we had yet to uncover. I am no one important, he replied, a gentle smile revealing the warmth in his voice. But I'm here because I believe this moment is pivotal for all of you. There are wounds in this room that go deeper than you realize. As he spoke, Emma's instincts kicked in, pulling her closer to me. I could feel her pulse quicken, a rhythmic thrum against my side. Mom, what's happening? Why is he glowing? She whispered fearfully, barely holding her ground. sometimes, it's not literal light we need to see, the man continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. But clarity. The kind that breaks through the noise and shadows of false pretenses. There's more binding you than any of you want to admit. My heart began to race as I recognized the courage in those words, the invitation to pierce through the veneer of our shared guilt. Jordan's posture shifted slightly, as if the truth was starting to dawn on him in waves. Yet, Rachel's features twisted, the attributes of her defiance tightening once more. "Stop it," she snapped, her voice trembling. "You don't know anything about us. You're just a stranger. Am I?" The man countered softly, not breaking eye contact with Rachel. "I see you, and I see the pain coursing through your veins. You refuse to acknowledge it, but the essence of who you are lies in the scars you carry." Tension crackled in the space between us like thunder before a storm. I could feel Rachel wavering, caught between the safe facade she had constructed and the bubbling anger that craved to surface. "Let him speak," I urged, the weight of my own past surging to the forefront. Maybe there is something we can learn." Against the flickering shadows, the man's presence grew stronger, a talisman of hope amid the tumult. "What you have failed to recognize is that true strength comes from vulnerability. Once you embrace what's broken within, that is where the healing begins." Laughter erupted from Emma, a sound tinged with nerves. "Healing? We're so broken, it can't just be fixed, right?" "Maybe it doesn't have to be fixed," he proposed, casting an earnest glance at her. "What if you are not meant to return to perfect, but instead to find peace in the fragments?" The room fell silent, and for the first time, I could sense the collective breath we held release ever so slightly. Rachel turned to me, her facade cracking, revealing deep fissures and forgotten dreams long submerged. "Could we?" she asked tentatively, as if she had been given a key to a door she never dared to open. "Could we truly heal?" Before I could respond, I felt Emma stiffen beside me, and I turned in time to see Jordan's expression darken from curiosity to desperation as he suddenly advanced towards the homeless man. "What do you know? Why are you here? You're not just some light." His voice cracked, a deep-seated pain spilling forth. In that moment, the air thickened with the weight of emotion and apprehension. I realized that this man, in his mystique, held the power to uncover not just our challenges, but the truths that bound our lives together in agonizing knots. "Perhaps I'm more than just light," he said cryptically. "Perhaps I'm the harbinger of truths you're yet to confront." With that, a low rumble echoed outside, and the ground trembled beneath us, as if the universe itself was responding to the awakening of our emotions. In that chaos, I could see each of us teetering on a precipice, the edge hovering tantalizingly close, daring us to leap, but it was then, just as realization washed over me like a cleansing wave, that the revelation struck. What if the man wasn't merely symbolic and the truths he spoke held tangible events from our past? As I searched for the strength to articulate my thoughts, the world around us surged once more, disease-ridden secrets lurking in dark alleyways, an impending loss that could forever shatter Emma's innocence, and emotions long buried that threatened to resurface with vengeful clarity. And in that terrifying moment, as the man continued to speak with the visual wisdom of lost souls accumulated over years of hardships, I understood. The greatest challenge ahead lay not in confrontation, but in the revelation of truths that could alter the very fabric of our lives, a truth each of us may not be ready to face. I clutched Emma closer, anticipating the shockwave ahead, knowing that, despite my own fragility, we were closer than ever to unraveling the threads that had bound us in silence for so long. The essence of choice, unbidden and raw, surged within me as darkness loomed, and as the chaotic energy settled, I knew one thing with unyielding certainty: the truth, however frightening, had finally come knocking. The air buzzed with energy, each heartbeat amplifying the weight of the moment. Outside, the storm pressed in, a cacophony of raindrops cascading against the glass like a second wave of noise. Yet, within the room, the tumult was more internal than external. Shadows shifted with each flicker of light, mirroring the turmoil swirling in our hearts. Rachel's eyes darted toward Jordan, who still stood rigid, battling his own rising tide of emotions. "You'd think all-knowing means you're better than others," she said, almost pleading with him to understand. "But do you even see what's right in front of you? Her voice cracked, a shattering note echoing the fragility of our situation. Jordan seemed taken aback, as if struck by her words. "What do you want me to see, Rachel? I don't know how to fix it, I don't even know what it is." His frustration boiled over, a tempest that threatened to engulf us all. She paused, taking a breath, as if summoning the courage to peel back the layers of resentment and bitterness entangled between them. "What if fixing isn't the answer?" she asked, her voice lowered to a whisper. "What if it's just about making space?" The homeless man, on the periphery of our escalating tension, crossed his arms, exuding a calmness that was almost contagious. "That's it," he interjected. "Space to feel, to grieve, to let go of what you can't control. Isn't that what you need?" I watched my daughters, two young women shaped by moments I could barely comprehend. Emma, ever the empath, seemed to sway between fear and understanding, while Rachel lingered in a land of protective bravado, unwilling to surrender her defenses. "Look," I said urgently, shifting my gaze from one to the other. "We can't pretend anymore, can we? All of us are standing on shifting ground, holding on to things we think define us. We've built walls, but I think this man is right, we need space to uncover who we really are." Emma's small voice pierced through the clamor. "But what if we discover we're more broken than we thought?" Despite the innocence behind her question, it carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid thoughts. I thought of all the times I had tried to create a picture of perfection in our familiar veneer that now felt laughable. Perhaps facing that brokenness is the only way to start healing. And healing is ugly and uncomfortable. As I spoke, I felt the tension ripple around us. Jordan stepped forward, the revelation dawning on him. "I'm not afraid of being vulnerable. I'm afraid of what he'll find there." Each word escaped him in a rush, raw with bravado. "You don't know what I've carried, what I've seen. It feels easier to sneer than to step into that space with you all." A connection rippled through the air, thickening with understanding. "We all carry something," I pressed gently, feeling the shift. "You fought off the shadows of your past, but what if we fought them together?" The stranger smiled faintly, sensing the tide turning. "Strength isn't defined by how much you can carry alone. It's found in the bravery of sharing those burdens." As the words settled, I felt the faintest flicker of hope ignite within me, a reminder that, amidst fracture, there was also an opening for growth. But hope felt like a double-edged sword, and I couldn't shake the fear that came with the realization of what lay beneath the surface. Suddenly, the distance fracture returned, fueled by a deeper wound. "What if it's too late?" Rachel burst out, her bravado crashing as tears threatened to spill. "What if we're irreparably broken? What if I never forgive you?" Her finger pointed towards Jordan, unmoored pain directed like an arrow as she continued, "Or you, Mom. Or any of us." In that fragile moment, silence enveloped the room, a chasm that could swallow us whole. I felt Emma's grip tighten, the despair reflected in her wide eyes shattering the last remnants of my own strength. "We need each other to keep us afloat," I murmured, though I felt my own resolve wavering. Jordan's lips parted, his features crumpling under the weight of vulnerability as he stepped closer to Rachel. "I don't want this to be the end," he said, fierce yet tremulous. "I want to know you, even when it's messy." Rachel trembled, taken aback by his desire for connection. An unspoken challenge lingered between them, one more potent than anything else floating in the air. And the homeless man, standing quietly as an observer, simply smiled. But just as it seemed we could inch toward a patch of common ground, a loud crash sounded from outside, a thunderclap accompanying a sudden flicker of the room's brightness. The power surged and dimmed, a harbinger of potential chaos. I turned, instincts alert, realizing that something catastrophic loomed beneath the surface, a storm not just outside but within us, waiting for an ignition point. "Not here," I declared softly but with determination. "We're not done. We need to face whatever is coming together." But as I tried to draw my daughters closer, exposing the core of our past to safeguard our future, my phone buzzed violently, the screen glowing like a beacon of impending doom. The name flashing across it sent icy tendrils down my spine, Grace, and in that heartbeat of terror, every secret suddenly felt like it could unravel at any moment. With every thrum of noise outside, the underlying sense of dread surged once more, and I braced myself for what could spill into our fragile moment of hope. In that instant, with the momentum shifting beneath our feet, I realized that the truth could indeed ignite devastation or liberation. And only the course we chose could shape the outcome of everything we had lost. I stared at the phone, breath catching in my throat. Grace. My older sister, the one who thrived in the gleaming world of privilege and success, had always had a certain power over me, a type of influence I could never quite shake, even as I tried to forge my own path. I felt trapped as memories danced in my mind like a dissonant melody, each note sharp with the pain of past decisions. Jordan, noticing my frozen expression, stepped forward. "Who is it?" His tone was soft, yet a tinge of concern laced every word. I hesitated, torn between the looming shadow of Grace and the fragile light that had flickered to life among us. It's my sister," I finally said, voice barely above a whisper, my stomach clenching. The atmosphere shifted, tension rippling through all of us as Emma instinctively leaned against me, grounding herself in my presence. "Is everything okay?" Rachel's voice held a note of skepticism, the cracks in her bravado more evident than ever. I could sense her reluctance to engage in anything that might expose more wounds, but I also felt the small ember of connection we had sparked yearning for. "No. No, everything is not okay," I admitted. "It feels like she has a radar for my worst moments, and it's never good." I sighed deeply, an unexpected avalanche of frustration flowing from my lips. "She's always judged me, especially when it comes to our family's pain, as if my struggles are just another piece of entertainment for her success story. Maybe she's just worried," or Emma started, but Rachel cut her off, her voice edged with familiarity. "Worried? Or controlling?" "You know it can be both," she fired back, her cheeks flushed with righteous anger. "You don't owe her anything." Mom. A sudden noise from outside, a loud clap of thunder followed by a cacophony of rain against the window attempted to drown out the building tensions between us. In that moment, I wanted to scream in frustration. I could feel Jordan's urge to keep things constructive, but Grace's looming presence made me falter. "What if she's calling to judge the chaos we're living through?" I said, meeting Rachel's fiery gaze. "What if she'll use it to prove that we're the disappointing family she always thought we were?" "I don't think I can take that right now." The homeless man, still a silent observer, stepped forward, bringing with him an unexpected yet reassuring warmth. "Sometimes the people we're afraid of carry burdens too. You'd be surprised at how hard it is for them to know you're hurting. Maybe she's reaching out for a connection without knowing how to say it." I nodded slowly, absorbing the wisdom in his words, while secretly thinking about the faults that Grace carried, masked by her poised exterior. But how do I respond? What if I can't give the right answer? Jordan took a deep breath, eyeing me with unexpected compassion. "Do you remember what you told me about letting go? It sounds like communication might be the space you need. Just be honest." My heart sank at his suggestion, but it began to simmer with a spark of hope as well. "You're right. But I don't think she wants honesty, she seeks perfection. If I reach out, will I become yet another disappointment?" Rachel scoffed lightly. "Then stop crumbling under her expectations. Talk to her. Share the mess. She might be shocked, might even respond differently than you expect." As we stood there, rain continuing to pen a sad symphony against the glass, I finally grasped my phone, heart hammering. My fingers hovered over the screen, trying to filter through the tumult of emotions raging inside me. Giving into my fears felt reckless, yet holding back felt suffocating. Just as I was about to hit the call button, the world outside shifted again. The storm thrummed louder, the winds howling, making the room container feel like a world caught in flux. Emma's gaze darted toward the window, mirroring the unease gnawing within me. "Maybe you should wait for a calmer moment," Emma suggested tentatively, pulling me back from the edge of my decision. "You don't know how she'll respond." Just then, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room with an eerie brightness, contrasted sharply against the shadows holding us hostage. The moment surged forward, as if something in the universe was urging me to choose a choice that might splinter us further or draw us closer together. Suddenly, my phone rang out in a sharp jolt, the sound slicing through the air like a knife. I jumped, almost dropping it, and my heart raced. Grace's name blared once more on the screen, the tension palpable as if the universe itself held its breath. "Mom, answer it," Rachel urged, her voice underlined with urgency. You need to face this head-on, resolved, yet terrified. I nodded, heartbeats echoing like alarm bells in my ears. Okay, but whatever happens, we stay together, all right? I glanced around, each of their faces lit with a mixture of fear and fierce loyalty. Together, they affirmed, a quiet strength blossoming among us. As I tapped the green icon, the line began to connect, a tether that might either pull us back into the darkness or lead us into unexplored light. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. This could change everything, but would it fracture us beyond repair? And before I could contemplate the repercussions, Grace's familiar voice filled my ear, chilling yet unyieldingly calm. Hi, it's me. We need to talk. About everything. In that instant, I felt the walls of our fragile sanctuary close in tighter, leaving me gasping in anticipation and dread, thrumming pulses of uncertainty echoing from the storm within, waiting to ignite. I gripped the phone tighter, Grace's words echoing in my mind like a haunting refrain. We need to talk. About everything. Just that sentence sent icy tendrils of memories creeping in, igniting old wounds. The storm outside seemed to mimic the tempest in my heart, both wild and uncontainable. Can you hear me? Grace's voice crackled through the receiver, but all I could process was the chill in her tone, a reminder that no matter how many years had passed, our relationship was still laced with unsaid grievances. Yeah, I can. My answer came out shaky, and I glanced at the others. Their eyes were locked onto me, reflecting their own fears but also bolstering me with courage. The juxtaposition of their warmth against Grace's dispassionate edge felt overwhelming. About our father, she continued, her voice chilling every word. I'm worried that it might be ruining you. This situation you're in. I've seen the pictures. The house is falling apart, Sarah. We can't let it bring us down. Rage flared in me, undercut by the deep-seated pain of her failing to comprehend our lives beyond the surface. You think I'm overwhelmed by the house? Grace, this isn't about the house. I felt the rising tides of sorrow morph into anger as I pointed the phone closer, conflicted emotions waging war within. It's the name-calling, the judgment. Don't you realize how small you make me feel? Don't take it personally. I'm simply trying to help, she replied, a feeble veil over the condescension that dripped from her voice. That I scoffed, feeling each word chip away at the walls I had reinforced around my heart. You've always thought you knew better, that you could shape me into someone I'm not. Maybe I don't want to be patched up like one of your projects, Grace. Perhaps what you see as control is just me caring enough to keep you from failing. You may think this is independence, but it looks more like denial. I don't want to see you repeat the same mistakes. With every word, she rubbed salt on old scars, the constant feeling of not measuring up, the desperate need to rise above the wreckage of our past. The echoes from our childhood came flooding in, tainting my thoughts. A father who vanished into his own despair, two confused sisters caught between loyalty and resentment. What mistakes, Grace? Because the last I checked, I'm just trying to survive. I shouted, the urgency of my feelings exploding like a firecracker. The line fell silent. I took the moment of pause as my own breaths grew heavy, wondering if I had finally pushed her too far, but to my dismay, she responded with a cool resolve. Survival isn't always enough. Do you honestly think struggling alone is honorable? I tried looking out for you, trying to give you a chance at happiness. When is that going to sink in? The open wounds of abandonment and betrayal stung, gnashing together sharper than any physical pain. Happiness isn't defined by the stability you think you have, or the perfect boyfriend, or your perfect life, Grace. It's messy. I took a shaky breath, realizing for the first time how layered our conflict really was. Maybe I won't ever be like you, but I won't pretend to be someone I'm not just to make you feel better. Her silence was palpable, I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. But I didn't let her linger too long in her deliberation. No more judgments. I won't let you dictate who I am or who I am becoming. Sarah, then, a loud crash erupted outside, signaling the identity of the storm's fiercest fury. The windows rattled, and outside, the world was drenched in chaos as the rain poured harder, winds whipping up like wild spirits unleashed. Hold on, I whispered, fear rising. "Did you hear that?" "No," a deafening roar cut her off. Jordan rushed to my side, his eyes wide with concern. "It looks like something fell over, maybe a tree." "We should check it out," I tensed, torn between the urgency outside and the weight of family on the line. "Grace, I have to go." "Wait." Grace's voice took on a pleading note that startled me. "Just one last thing," but before she could finish, I felt Emma, ever the soft-hearted balancer, tugging at my arm. "Let's see what's going on." That I didn't even pause for another word with Grace. My focus shifted entirely outside as the sound of chaos drew closer, a beckoning siren call from the darkening night. As we moved toward the door, my heart still racing from the intensity of my sister's words, I caught a glimpse of a figure slumped against the wooden fence bordering our property. My stomach lurched, fear coursing through me as I realized who it might be. "Is that?" Emma's hand shot to her mouth, but I could barely process the thought racing through my mind. Grace's final words echoed in the background. Everything was spiraling. Just as I stepped outside to confront the encroaching darkness, the storm finally broke overhead, the lightning flashed, illuminating the frail body crumpled beneath the tree, a ghost of the past manifesting in the present. And in that fateful moment, I knew that my sister and our family chaos would be the least of my worries. The past wasn't done with me yet, not by a long shot. The wind howled like an anguished spirit as I stepped outside, my heart pounding in tandem with the storm's fury. The rain soaked through my clothes almost instantly, a chilling reminder of the trouble I didn't want to acknowledge. But those twisted limbs and that crumpled figure, it had to be him. "Please don't be who I think it is," I whispered, urgency ripping through the words as I approached the tangle of branches, forcing myself to confront the sight before me. My sister's hand clutched mine tightly, a lifeline keeping me tethered to the world amid the chaos. As I knelt beside the shadowed figure, my breath caught in my throat. "Dad?" Even the name felt foreign on my tongue, wrapped in years of harshness and silence. That he stirred slightly, his dirty clothes clinging to his frail frame as he looked up, eyes clouded but unfocused. Violet shades of bruising adorned his skin, remnants of a life spent fighting demons both literal and figurative. "Sarah," he croaked, his voice a mere whisper. The memories flooded in, mixing with the rain beating down mercilessly around us. I remembered the night spent waiting in vain as he swayed like a ghost through our hallways, searching for solace in bottles that only fed his demons. The sound of his laughter seemed trapped somewhere in my past, buried beneath layers of hurt and betrayal. I'd long since stopped searching for it, convincing myself that freedom from that sound equated to a form of liberation. Why? I couldn't find the strength to finish my question, my voice breaking like the branches overhead. "Why now? Why here?" He looked at me with an intensity one hadn't seen in years. "I didn't know where else to go," he admitted, his eyes glistening like the rain clung to his skin. "I thought maybe I could find you here." Jordan pushed through my frozen shock, kneeling down beside me. "We need to get him inside." His tone was practical, but the emotion behind his eyes told me he, too, was grappling with the weight of the moment. I felt the world pressing in around me, father's return eroding the fragile facade of stability I'd clung to for so long. "Can you stand?" I managed to choke out, my heart pounding against the cobwebbed emotions tangled within. It felt like pulling at threads that could unravel the whole tapestry of my life. He tried to rise, but his knees buckled, and I instinctively reached out to catch him. The force of his weight nearly toppled me over, but it also sparked something raw within. "Please, Dad. Just lean on me." The words sounded foreign, almost alien, yet necessary. As the three of us struggled against the rain, I caught Emma's expression. She stood back instinctively, debating if she should rush in and help or maintain her distance from this sordid reunion. I felt something twist in my gut, an urge to yell at her to come closer. But it was also a silent plea. "This is family," I wanted to scream. "This is my father." Somewhere in that chaos, a flicker of hope emerged, a soft wind amidst the storm. Perhaps this was an unexpected opportunity, a chance to confront the shadows and face the pain together. How could that be possible? What did I want from him now? Forgiveness? Understanding? Closure? Or just acknowledgement of the years lost? Finally, with his arm draped over my shoulder, we trudged back toward the house. As we reached the door, a wave of dread washed over me. Grace would want to know, would demand to know. Would she even let him inside? Would she slather him with judgment or criticism? The thought sent tremors through me. Jordan pulled the door open, his frustrated hand brushing away the raindrops clinging to my father's filthy visage. "Well, figure it out," he said softly, his eyes flickering between the overwhelming storm outside and the weight of the storm inside us, and just as I was about to usher him into the warmth of our home and our lives, I felt a sharp jab in my heart, a sudden realization that so much was still left unspoken. My father's return wouldn't heal the fractures of our family, it might just widen them further. "Dad, I need to know that you're serious," I said, tension lining every word. "This can't be just another temporary moment of clarity. If you're truly here, you need to promise that you won't disappear again." His gaze faltered, and for a split second, I saw the man I longed to believe he could be. But was that hope irrational? As the wind howled louder, heralding tales untold, I felt an eerie calm settle over us that rang false. "Please," he murmured, "I just want to start over." In that charged moment, hope and fear intertwined, even as I felt the ground beneath my feet slip away. My heart raced as uncertainty threatened to swallow me whole. The unresolved conflict with Grace loomed large in my mind, the storm was endless, and now a tempest was brewing right at our doorstep. Just as I took my first step into that unpredictable future, a thunderous crack sounded from behind us, a cruel reminder that the storms outside weren't the only ones consuming my life. Why did the storm feel more like a beckoning than a breach? And there it was, a figure lurking in the shadows, eyes glinting with knowing. Away from the storm, a new unsettling warmth gnawed at my heart, offering a promise of revelations, both joyous and terrifying. As we crossed the threshold of the house, the oppressive atmosphere felt heavier than the storm itself. My father leaned on me more than he intended, his body a stark reminder of the years he had spent fleeing from his own demons. He was no longer the man I remembered, but the possibility of who he could become hovered in the air like a tantalizing whisper. My sister Emma's eyes darted between our father's frail form and me, uncertainty mirrored in her expression. I could sense her subtle brimming tension, half anticipation, half dread. "Dad?" Emma ventured, her voice almost swallowed by the ambient echoes of rain against glass. "Is it really you?" The question hung there, laden with a burden that neither of us had the strength to articulate. "That if he's really here," Jordan said, softening the edges of his practicality, "then we need to talk about what comes next." His eyes turned to mine, searching for solidarity as he pulled a blanket from the back of the couch and wrapped it around my father's shoulders. But I wasn't ready, my heart still racing with all the memories I didn't want to remember. "What do you want, Dad?" I asked again, desperate for clarity. "I want to make amends," he replied, voice frail but earnest. "For everything I missed, for the pain I caused." The words slipped out like an apology wrapped in the emotion of desperate vulnerability. But amid the bitterness I felt, I couldn't ignore the spark of something else, an eagerness to believe that perhaps he didn't want to be the same man he had been. "Amends?" The skepticism laced through my tone could have cut glass. "How do you propose to do that after all this time? The years of silence and chaos?" My father's gaze dropped, the weight of my words hitting him like the sideways rain outside. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the soft crunch of the rain and our collective breaths. But amidst that stillness, something deep within me shifted. Perhaps there was an opening, a chance to mend the threads of our fraying relationship, but each thread needed to be cautiously approached. Emma stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should let him talk. He's here, and he's trying. I echoed incredulously. "You think that's enough? How many times did we hear that before?" I could see Emma flinch at my tone, her gentle heart taking the brunt of my anger, but that was the only way the hurt would bleed out. "Look," Jordan said softly, "it's not easy for any of us. But denying him the chance, we might never find out whether he's serious this time." He turned to my father, sympathy mingling with caution in his gaze. "You need to understand, we're all scared. We've had enough empty promises. So prove it, prove it the echo of Jordan's words resonated in the room, bouncing against the walls that bore witness to all our pains. My father gripped the edges of the blanket, knuckles white as he strained to find the words amid the jumbled chaos of his thoughts. "I will try harder," he said finally, voice breaking. "But I can't expect you to accept me right away. I have to earn it again." The honesty in his voice pinched my heart, a bittersweet reminder of my own buried desires. What wounds would I need to dredge up to allow him back into our lives fully? Would it be enough for him to show me he'd stay? My heart raced, a mix of hope tainted by the crushing fear of disappointment. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a sharp gust of wind brought in an unfamiliar scent, one that hinted at rain-soaked earth and a trace of something far less comforting. I turned and my heart almost stopped. Standing in the doorway was Grace, drenched and furious, her brow furrowed with disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded, the fire in her eyes sparking fear within me. She hadn't seen our father yet, but I could see the storm brewing behind her, an impending collision of loyalties and emotions already forming in the air, a clash of decisions yet unmade. "Grace, please don't please me. You have him in here," she snarled, waving a hand toward my father, who was struggling to sit upright on the couch. Horror flickered across her face. She hadn't signed up for this chaotic reunion. My heart racing, I rushed forward, desperate to shield my father from the impending onslaught of hurt that would spill forth. "It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? You think you can just let this man return to our lives like a whimsical guest? Do you even remember what he took from us?" Her voice trembled, laced with anger and fear. As I dove into my entangled emotions, there was a crack in the thunder outside, shaking the house like a warning. I swallowed the lump in my throat, wondering if it was possible to keep my family from crumbling under the weight of the truth unfolding before us. "No!" I shouted, the words slicing through me, desperate and raw. "I can't go back to that life. If he's serious, can't you see? I'm trying to give him a chance." But in that moment of vulnerability, the skies erupted in a ferocious downpour, drowning out our heated words. Grace's eyes narrowed, and her anger morphed into something else, something darker. I knew right then that my world was on the precipice of unraveling once more. Before I could utter another word, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, and I caught a glimpse of something on the coffee tableen envelope, edges frayed but unmistakably familiar. It glimmered ominously, a reminder that some ghosts refuse to stay buried. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my voice wavering as I reached for it. "Don't!" Grace shouted, but it was too late. My fingers brushed against the surface, and I froze as the realization sank in that instant. With the storm outside raging louder than ever, I understood that there were more secrets lurking in the shadows, and opening that envelope might tear apart whatever fragile peace we had hoped to build. The air crackled with tension as I prepared to unveil the painful truths hidden inside. A new storm was brewing, and this time, it might destroy everything we had left. As I held the envelope, a tremor ran through me, one that went far beyond mere curiosity. This was not just a piece of paper, it was a Pandora's box that could unleash a chain of events that might finally shatter the tentative bonds I'd begun to weave with my father, with Grace, and even with Jordan. The storm outside mirrored the cyclone of emotions swirling within my mind, an unpredictable tempest threatening to unveil secrets that had long been buried. "Don't open it." Grace's voice rose above the thunder, a desperate plea tinged with fear. Her wide eyes were pleading, almost panicked, as if the contents of that envelope could rewrite our very history. "You don't know what you'll find," she continued, her expression fracturing with anguish. In that moment, I felt the weight of all our past grievances settle onto my shoulders. Each unspoken word, every moment of betrayal, rose to the surface, as I remembered our fractured family, our dad, and the slow disintegration of our trust. But amidst that tidal wave of fear, something else flickered, a glimmer of hope. What if this envelope held the truths we desperately needed to grow? Wasn't understanding the only way to heal? I had to let the truth shine. The darkness could no longer shackle us. With unsteady hands, I tore open the envelope, the paper crackling like thunder. My heart raced. Inside was a collection of letters, handwritten messages penned in a scrawl I recognized all too well. They were addressed to me, but written long ago. My breath caught as I unfolded the first one. Sarah, I know I've been absent. But you must understand, families are complicated. I've made choices that led us down different paths. I still love you. Please believe that one day, I hope to explain them why. Father's voice echoed in my memory, the man I once yearned to connect with, still clinging to the edges of my heart despite years of abandonment. I looked up to see Jordan's eyes glued to me, filled with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Emma stepped forward, hesitant but intrigued, and even Grace seemed momentarily struck by the possibilities. Read them, Jordan urged softly. So I did. Each letter took me on a journey through the tangles of our past, unveiling vulnerabilities I had long hidden beneath layers of resentment. There were letters where my father, in his unsteady handwriting, poured out his guilt, his regrets regarding the moments he had missed, birthdays, graduation, milestones that should have bonded us. Why didn't you just come back? My voice trembled, both with sorrow and anger. I was simultaneously blown away by his confessions and filled with youthful anger that he had found it impossible to return before now. I didn't know how to face it all, my father said, his voice breaking. I thought it was too late, but it isn't. Emma chimed in, stepping closer to him, picking up the threads that had been woven among us. You're here now. We can start fresh. I don't want fresh, Grace suddenly interjected, hurt radiating from her like a tangible force. I want answers. I want to know why he chose to disappear when we needed him the most. Perhaps I didn't know what to tell you, my father admitted, shame draping over his features like a heavy veil. I was drowning in my own mistakes, too ashamed to reach for you. The bleakness of his admission hung thickly in the air, an acknowledgement of failures that had driven us to this pivotal moment. Admitting your shortcomings doesn't mean erasing the past, I said bluntly, feeling the swell of indignation. You left us, and it's not so easy to forget. My voice quivered, but I pressed on. This isn't just about you coming back, it's about what we lost when you left. It's about trust. A taut silence settled in the room, an acknowledgement of the pain we each bore. I wanted to confront the ghosts of our past without demonizing him, because perhaps he was just as broken as I felt. I had to admit that I let my hurt turn into anger, I whispered, the weight of my own pain spilling forth. It's been easier to blame you than to understand. Then Grace took a step closer to him, eyes narrowed in determination but tinged with a hint of vulnerability. And what about us? She asked, her voice wavering as the walls she had built around herself began to tremble. Do you even realize what losing you meant for us? Their gaze locked for a brief moment, a flicker of understanding igniting between them like a light piercing through the murky darkness that had long clouded our family. It was then that I decided to turn the focus back on what truly mattered, the connection that had been fraying at the seams for far too long. You see, I started, my voice steadier, this is our chance to shift the narrative. We can either let the shadows control who we are or embrace the messy truth and grow together. Jordan stepped forward, wrapping his arms around Emma and me. We can't pick and choose which memories to keep. But we can decide how to move forward together. As the storm howled outside, I felt the energy in the room shift again. What once felt like a brush with disaster now began to mold itself into an opportunity for reconnection, filled with raw honesty and a refusal to allow our history to dictate our future. Let's make new memories, I suggested. Together. And as I looked around at the faces of my family, I realized that the struggle against our past could finally unearth healing beneath the surface. Perhaps it wasn't too late to rewrite our story. Backed by the warm light from the storm outside, I smiled. In that chaotic moment, amid darkness, forgiveness beckoned like a sunrise breaking on the horizon. With the weight of our shared history mingling in the air, we began to recognize the possibility of a brighter tomorrow, a glimmer of hope that forged connections, wrapped tightly around us like a tapestry stitched from our collective stories. Let's embrace this messy journey, I whispered softly, feeling the love woven into each connection, with the promise of brighter days ahead. Our family, the bond that had been frayed, had a chance to heal. For within the storm that was our life, we found the strength to create something new. And in that realization, I finally understood, darkness can cultivate the brightest lights. And that light could shatter through all barriers. With that thought, I knew we could navigate through everything together.